My beloved child, stop for a moment and listen closely, because there is something about your words that you may not fully understand yet, and someone has been carrying those words much longer than you realize, wondering why a simple sentence from you can stay in their mind long after everything else becomes quiet. There are moments when you speak without thinking, when you send a message, say a name, offer a small kindness, or simply tell the truth in the way only you can, and you move on with your day believing that the moment has ended, but somewhere beyond your sight, those words continue to echo inside someone who has been trying desperately to understand why your voice reaches a place in them that nobody else seems able to touch. You may have noticed the silence lately, the hesitation, the strange distance, the unanswered question hanging between you and someone whose presence has become difficult to explain, and perhaps you have wondered whether your words mattered at all, but the silence you interpreted as indifference may have been hiding something far more emotional than you ever imagined, because sometimes a person becomes quiet not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and do not know what to do with it, and sometimes the words that affect someone most are not the dramatic ones, but the ordinary words spoken at exactly the moment their heart needed to hear them. Think about the words you once said without realizing their weight. The sentence you thought they would forget, the encouragement you offered when they were pretending to be strong, the gentle truth you spoke when everyone else was telling them what they wanted to hear, because there is a reason that particular memory keeps returning to them even when they try to push it away. You may think they remember your appearance, your smile, your presence, or the moments you shared, but what may have reached them most deeply was something much simpler, the way you made them feel seen when they had become accustomed to hiding, and that is where the mystery begins. There is someone who has replayed conversations with you in their mind, changing the meaning of certain words, wondering whether you meant more than you said, wondering whether you knew how deeply your voice affected them, and wondering why, among all the people they have encountered, your words somehow managed to pass through defenses they spent years building. They may never have told you this. They may not even know how to tell themselves. But something shifted inside them. At first, they tried to dismiss it. They told themselves that your words were simply words, that the timing meant nothing, that the connection was nothing more than coincidence, and that the feelings would eventually disappear if they stayed busy enough. But then something strange happened. They heard another person say something similar to what you had once said. And instead of hearing that person's voice, they remembered yours. They walked through a familiar place and remembered something you told them. They heard a song and suddenly felt the weight of a conversation they thought they had forgotten. They looked at their phone for no reason and wondered whether your name might appear. And every time they tried to convince themselves that they were finally moving forward, another small reminder pulled them backward into the question they had never answered. Why do your words have such a strong effect on me? That question has become more important than they expected, because the deeper they look, the more they realize that you did not simply speak to their ears. You spoke to something they had buried, something they had stopped trusting, something they had convinced themselves they no longer needed, hope. And perhaps this is why the connection has felt confusing to you. You may have wondered why the smallest interaction seemed to carry such enormous emotional weight, why a short conversation can leave you thinking for hours, why a brief silence can feel louder than a long explanation, and why certain moments between you seem almost suspended in time. But not every powerful connection arrives with a dramatic announcement. Some arrive quietly. Some begin with a sentence. Some begin with a look. Some begin with a moment so ordinary that you do not recognize its significance until much later. And sometimes destiny does not knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers through words. There is a reason you crossed paths with certain people when you did. There is a reason some conversations happened when your heart was vulnerable. There is a reason some people appear for a season while others seem impossible to forget. And there is a reason someone may be struggling to forget you now. You may believe you were simply being yourself, and perhaps you were. But being yourself was exactly what made your words powerful, because you were not trying to control their emotions, impress them, or convince them of anything. You simply spoke from a place of sincerity, and sincerity can be frightening to someone who has spent a long time protecting their heart. They may have been surrounded by people who said beautiful things but meant very little, people who made promises and disappeared, people who spoke affectionately while behaving carelessly, people who knew how to sound convincing but never made them feel safe. Then you came along and said something simple, something honest, something they were not prepared to hear, and suddenly, the walls they had built did not feel quite as secure as they once had. That is why they may have pulled away. That is why they may have become quieter. That is why they may have seemed confused. Your words did not simply make them feel good. Your words made them feel something they could not easily control. And when someone has spent years controlling their emotions, feeling something deeply can feel like losing control. So they retreat, they become distant, they analyze, they overthink, they search for logical explanations, they tell themselves that they are imagining things. But late at night, when distractions disappear, the truth becomes harder to escape. They remember you. They remember what you said. And they remember how they felt when you said it. Perhaps there was a moment when you encouraged them without knowing how badly they needed encouragement. Perhaps you told them they were stronger than they believed. Perhaps you reminded them that they deserved something better. Perhaps you simply told them, "I believe in you," when they had secretly stopped believing in themselves. You may have forgotten that moment. They may not have. And this is where your story becomes deeper than you realize, because sometimes you become part of someone's healing without ever knowing it. You may never see the night they cried because your words gave them enough strength to keep going. You may never know how many times they repeated something you said to themselves when fear returned. You may never understand how your voice became a quiet refuge during a season when they felt completely alone. That does not mean you are responsible for saving them. It means your presence carried meaning. And meaning leaves a mark. But there is another side to this story, one you may not expect. Your words affected them because, somewhere inside, they were already searching for the truth you gave them. You did not create the longing, you awakened it. You did not create their desire for love. You reminded them that love could still feel safe. You did not create their hunger for purpose. You reminded them that their life could still mean something. And you did not force their heart toward you. You simply became the person whose words made it impossible for them to continue pretending they felt nothing. That is why this connection may feel unfinished, because something has not yet been fully spoken. There are words waiting behind silence. There are questions hiding behind ordinary conversations. There is an emotional truth that has been moving slowly beneath the surface, and the longer it remains unspoken, the stronger the pressure becomes. You may have wondered whether they will ever tell you what your words meant. You may have wondered whether they think about you. You may have wondered whether the distance means the connection is ending. But sometimes distance is not the ending. Sometimes distance is where clarity is born. When someone is constantly near you, they can distract themselves from what they feel. But when you become absent, your absence becomes a mirror. Suddenly they notice what your presence had been doing to their life. They notice the calm they felt around you. They notice the way they laughed more freely. They notice the way conversations with you seemed to make time disappear. They notice how strangely empty certain moments feel without you. And eventually, they are forced to ask the question they were avoiding. What if this person matters to me more than I ever admitted? That question changes everything, because once the heart recognizes significance, pretending becomes exhausting. You may soon notice something subtle, a change in tone, a message that feels different, a question that seems ordinary but carries hidden meaning. A sudden attempt to reconnect, a memory brought up for no obvious reason, a person who once avoided emotional conversations suddenly becoming curious about what you truly feel. Do not rush to force the answer. Let the truth reveal itself. Because what is real does not need to be dragged into the light before it is ready. There is something sacred about allowing another person's heart to arrive at its own truth.